Okay, so today I'm interviewing Michael Hanrahan. Michael specialises in self-publishing for small businesses. You've been in the game about 15 years now, Michael?
More than that. I've been in publishing for about a bit over 20 years now.
Okay.
So I worked at John Wiley and Sons and Write Books for about 7 years, two publishing companies, and then I went out on my own after that. I was a freelance editor for about 10 years, and we've been doing the self-publishing for small business for about 4 or 5 years now.
What has that publishing journey been like? I guess perhaps prior to going out on your own, and then subsequent to that running your own business.
Well, for me personally, it was starting at a very small publishing company. So the company I mentioned before, Write Books, there were about 4 or 5 staff. The editors had to do absolutely everything. We even unpacked the books when they arrived, so it was a great place to work. Very hands-on, really good place to learn the ropes in the publishing industry. I was there for about 3.5 years. And then Write Books got taken over by John Wiley and Sons. So then I became managing editor of John Wiley and Sons. So I was there for about 3.5 years, and that was going from a very small publishing company to a very major publishing company. So all sorts of learning experiences there, going to a large company. So that was a really good experience. And then after that, I went freelance. So freelancing was mostly for the major publishers. Wiley, Random House, 5 Mile Press, Hardy Grant, those sorts of things. So like I say, I did that for about 10 years. That's when the publishing industry started to change. So the major publishers started doing fewer books and self-publishing was starting to grow. So we started having a look at what we were doing, and we decided that self-publishing, I was doing suddenly 3 or 4 self-publishing books a year without making any effort to do that.
Wow.
So we saw that as a definite trend. That's when we decided to move into the self-publishing for small business.
Okay, fantastic. So Michael, how do you think the internet has changed the publishing landscape?
Well, the internet, that's a very good question. The internet's changed publishing in a lot of ways, like most industries. So probably the biggest thing it's done for self-publishers is it allows them to distribute their books themselves. So if you're selling your book on Amazon, ebook or print version or audio books these days as well, you can manage your own distribution just through Amazon and those sorts of sites. So previously, 6 or 7 years ago, a self-publisher had to post books out themselves from their bedroom, that kind of thing, because as a self-publisher you couldn't get major bookshop distribution. It was very difficult. So these days it allows authors to distribute their books themselves, so that's a very big change. The other thing it allows them to do is market their books themselves. So obviously social media is huge these days. A lot of authors, a lot of self-published authors, or a lot of traditionally published authors as well, build a social media platform to get a following. So that allows them to promote their latest book. You sort of get a good following around authors who are readers who are interested in your books. So for marketing and social media, that kind of thing, it's been very powerful as well.
In addition to things like social media, things like book launches and book giveaways, those sorts of things, book signings, that I imagine that they are still part of the book release kind of strategy. But beyond that, and beyond the social media, or perhaps even leading up to a social media campaign, would you be recommending a publicity campaign also as part of that book promotion process?
Look, it depends very much on what the individual author is aiming to do. So some of the authors that we work with, their focus is if you're trying to get book sales, then you definitely need a publicity campaign. Some authors that we work with, because their books are to promote their business, they're actually not so interested in how many copies they sell. We had an author a couple of years ago. He was a real estate agent. He printed 1,000 copies, which is quite a few for a self-publisher. And he was going to leave a copy of his book in every house he visited until he went through his 1,000 copies.
Wow.
So obviously he doesn't need any publicity whatsoever. That's not why he was doing it.
Okay.
So it's all about what you're trying to do with your book. For most of the authors we work with, it's a combination of all sorts of things. So they do a little bit of publicity, they do a little bit of social media, they do a little bit of promoting the book to their existing clients in their business.
Yep.
They do a little bit of reaching out to industry leaders, that sort of thing. It's a very good way to connect with people in your industry. So these days, we always work with our authors to help them develop their strategies. And for most authors, we work on the strategy while the book's being produced, so that when it's printed and it lands in their office, then they're ready to go. So it's a problem if you think, I'll wait till the book comes in and then I'll work out what I'm going to do with it. So you should be working on that, what you're going to do with it while it's being produced. So that the day that it's printed, it lands on your desk, you know, 200 copies, you can celebrate for 5 minutes, and then you can get going on your plan.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So we help our authors develop their plans while their books are being produced. And for most of them, they have, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different things they're going to do with it the minute it comes in. And publicity is one of those things. Social media is one of those things. A book launch is one of those things. So, yeah, there's lots of bases that our authors hit with their books.
So in terms of planning how these things are going to work, does that same sort of planning, is that applied to different formats that authors may be thinking of publishing their books in?
Yep, very much so. Yeah, it absolutely does. So most of our authors do, the two basic formats for most of our authors are paperback and ebook.
Okay.
We have, at the moment, maybe a couple of authors a year who also do a hardback version.
Okay.
And then we're seeing more and more people do audiobook versions as well.
Right.
So you actually need a different strategy for each of those. So, you can do different things with your ebook compared to your print book, and you can do different things with the hardback compared to what you might do with your paperback. So you factor in each different format into your plan. One of the things a lot of our authors like to do, for example, is with the ebook that you can't do with the other versions, is you run a discounted campaign. So you list your ebook for a couple of weeks at, say, 99 cents, which is a very popular strategy, and that gets, hopefully, helps you get a lot of book sales when your book comes out. So it just helps generate interest in your book.
Absolutely.
So things like that. You can't do that with the print version of your book, because if you sell it for 99 cents, you're not even covering the print cost.
Right.
And Amazon literally won't let you list your print book at 99 cents
of course,
because it doesn't cover the print cost.
Yeah, and so things like ebooks and audiobooks have such a small marginal cost that you can literally afford to just duplicate them for almost nothing. And
absolutely, you can literally list your ebook for free if you want to.
Yeah.
I don't think that's such a good strategy.
No.
The reason is it shows up on Amazon in the lists. They have separate bestseller lists for paid and free books. So it actually shows up in the free section. So you're not doing your credibility much good if your book shows up in the free section.
That's true. So what do you think motivates your authors to write about their business experiences?
Yeah, so we work with a very specific type of author. So most of the authors we work with, the book is actually a marketing tool. So it's very much, their aim is very much to build their business and promote their business and promote themselves, establish themselves as an expert in their field, gain publicity for their business, those sorts of things. So it's a very specific style of publishing. Most of our authors, they print 200 copies to start off with. That's our average first print run. Okay. Even if you sold all of those books, you're not going to come close to covering the production cost of your books.
I see.
So there's obviously got to be other benefits and other reasons why they do it.
Right.
And so those reasons are, to put it simply, it's mostly publicity. So we've had a few authors on TV recently. We regularly get authors who are interviewed for blogs and all that kind of thing, podcasts. Another area our authors often do well in with their books is it's very good for getting speaking gigs at conferences.
Right. So, which can be quite lucrative.
Absolutely, it can. Yeah, we had an author about a year ago who did a speaking gig at a conference, and she had 500 people listening to her, and she said pretty much every person bought a book afterwards. So,
wow.
And the value for her in that is not the 500 book sales.
No.
The value in that for her is the 500 people who've gone away with that book in their hands, and then if they need help, she had a marketing business. If they need help with their marketing, they're going to look at the book and say, oh, wow, she was awesome, I'm going to contact her. Your
revenue from the book, which has not directly come from book sales, but has indirectly come from your book potentially into professional services incomes, and that may be weekends away, retreats, workshops. So once the credibility and influence of the author is established, then that revenue from the book doesn't necessarily come from pro rata book sales, but it actually comes from the professional services fees for people who come and want to learn more about their business experience, something like that.
That exactly like that. Yeah, that's 100% correct. So I stay in contact with our authors after their books come out. We've done about 100 books in the last 3 or 4 years. I've not spoken to a single author 3 months after their book came out who said, oh, this was such a waste of money, I wish I hadn't done it.
Wow.
They all say the exact opposite. I get the regular surprised phone calls from our authors a month, 2 months after their book comes out, and they say, "You're not going to believe what happened to me because I sent this copy of the book out."
Wow.
All sorts of things start to happen. So that what happens, the book actually takes on a bit of a life of its own. And the sort of things we hear are, I sent it to this journalist. This journo wasn't interested in it, but she obviously gave it to so-and-so who gave it to so-and-so. And now I've been interviewed in the Weekend magazine in The Age.
Wow.
So that's the sort of things that start to happen. So that's all the publicity side of things. In terms of what you were talking about with the professional services, that is absolutely what happens. I do it myself with my book. I very rarely do people walk in here and leave with less than 3 books. I just give people books left, right, and centre.
Yep.
So what happens is they come to have a meeting with us. They're presumably talking to 1 or 2 other self-publishing businesses. I'm the only one who's going to give them a copy of my book that's about how to self-publish a book.
Okay.
So they go back to their offices. They've got a few emails from a few people about here's our service, that kind of thing, and they've got my book in their hands
and a couple of business cards from the other ones.
Yeah, exactly right. A couple of business cards from the other ones. So they flick through the book, and it does a few things. Number one, it just simply makes you more prominent than the other businesses that they've spoken to.
Absolutely.
The other thing it does is it actually qualifies your clients for you. So my book very specifically describes how we work, what we do. It gives you an idea of costs and timeframes and all that kind of thing. If you've looked at my book and you thought, "Oh, this book's not for me," then we're not the right company for you. So that helps them choose who to work with.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it works the other way.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I hadn't thought of it from that point of view, but so it's literally a lead generator.
My book is like most of our authors. My book's actually very strategically written. So in both content. So the content is designed to be appropriate for people who are at exactly the point where they want to learn about the process. So they've finished writing their book and they're like, "Okay, what do I do next? I've got no idea. I've never done this before." So it's at the introductory level in terms of printing, cover design, all that kind of stuff. So the book is absolutely, and this is very important. The book itself is not a sales pitch. So the book itself does not say, "Use Michael Hanrahan, he's fantastic. Well, Michael's the best ever." It doesn't say any of that. It's just really useful information. And so the point of it is, like, say after the meeting, they go back to their office, they pick it up and they flick through and they say, "Gee, this Michael guy is really good. He's given me lots of info. I'm starting to understand the process. His personality comes through in his book. I would love to work with this guy. He seems just right for me. I'll ring him up and have a chat." Give
away your knowledge for free, but sell your expertise. So obviously, from what I understand, what you're saying is your book is very much about the sharing of that knowledge, what you will be going through as an author. You've written your manuscript. What are the next phases likely to be? What will it be like? What are the potential pathways that your book might follow for a business author, whether there's any difference between the audience that they're writing their book for versus the audience that they might be selling their business services to?
Yes,
or are they the same group?
That's a very interesting question. Most of the time they're, in fact, probably say all the time they are the same group. Our authors, like I say, as I did, our authors do write their books very strategically. So there is a plan for where the book usually sits into their sales process.
Okay.
So for me, like I say, my book it's designed for, I literally start off the book. The opening of the book is me talking about how people finish their book and then they say, "I don't know what to do next." That's when they need to talk to me.
Fantastic.
Or someone like me. So the point is they pick up the book, they learn a little bit about publishing and they say, "This is exactly where I am in the process. This Michael guy seems good. I'll have a chat to him." So most of our authors, their books are very strategically written to do exactly that. Fantastic. So if you're let's say you're a financial planner, your book might be about, are you 45 years old and you've got $50,000 in the bank and you want to plan for your retirement in 20 years. So it'll have some strategies and information in there for you to do that. So what happens is now, and this is the same sort of case with my book, you can take that book and go away and do those strategies and never ring up that financial planner. That's absolutely fine. You've still bought a copy of their book. They've made some money on the book. You know about them. It's, they're building their profile as an author.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with me. You could take my book and go away and use my book to self-publish your own book. What more often happens is people learn a little bit about the subject. Same with the financial planner. They learn a little bit about the strategies, all that kind of thing. And they say, "I'm not going to do this myself. It's too hard. I need someone to help. Who wrote this book? Chris. He seems to know what he's talking about. I'll give Chris a call."
Okay.
So authors sometimes wonder, they sometimes say to me, "Oh, if I put all this stuff in my book, they're not going to need me." And that is not the case at all. It is not
giving
the case at all.
So giving the game away, sharing all the secret sauce,
right.
and being concerned about that. That's kind of an
right.
instinctive response, really, isn't it?
It is.
And what happens in reality with that?
Let's use a financial planner for an example. They'll say, okay, I'll this strategy, okay, I'll buy this property and I'll go into the share market, whatever it is. Then they need someone to help them with that.
Yeah.
They are still going to say, I actually still need someone to do these services for me. Again,
Yes.
Who wrote this book? Chris, I'll give him a call.
Okay.
Now, they could use all that information to go away and do themselves.
Yeah.
But the reality is most of the time they won't. And they will still need help. So it's like with my book about how to self-publish a book.
Yeah.
You could go away and do it yourself, and some people definitely do. But the reality is most people are going to read it, learn a bit about the process and say, great, now I feel more knowledgeable about it. I've learned about it. I still want someone to help me. I'm going to give Michael a call.
There's a certain transparency about that as well too, I think, which people may appreciate, that I want to do with you, but I really don't know. Your experience is not within my experience. Yep. I would like to know who you are first, an idea of what you do, how you do it, all that sort of, which is then probably more likely to lead to an ongoing relationship, as opposed to the other alternative, which is take the great leap of faith and just hand the whole thing over to Michael or another publisher, cross your fingers and hope the whole thing works out, of informing your customer as to what to expect. Do you feel that's an element?
Very much so. That is absolutely an important element of it. I've literally had people ring me up and they said, I found a copy of your book in the bookshop when I was researching how to self-publish a book. Wow. I read it. It was fantastic. You seem like just the guy to help me. And they just ring up because they bought the book.
Yeah.
So that again, that's how it works. Now, they could have taken the book and gone and found their own designer and editor and all that kind of stuff. And that's fine. If they do that, great. I'm happy for them. You know, it's like they've bought a copy of my book. That's good for me. They've gone and self-published their book. That's absolutely fine. But very much, again, my personality comes through in the book. How we work comes through in the book. And people do, I had one little while ago, he literally rang me up and said, I've read your book. You really seem to know what you're talking about. I want to work with you. I always encourage authors, with the exception, you mentioned the secret sauce before, obviously, with the exception of your secret sauce. So if you've got if you're a financial planner and you've got some really super awesome strategy that only you know about, you don't put that in the book.
Gotcha.
That's where the value is in your business.
That's your expertise versus sharing knowledge about dealing with you or being
exactly right. But in terms of sort of general information about your business, we don't do anything particularly revolutionary in self-publishing. We're just really good at it. So it doesn't matter that I put lots of information in there. Like I don't hold back. I put everything in, how much it costs, how long it takes, the things to watch out for, all that kind of thing. I put it all in there. That's fine. Have this information. You will use us because we're good at what we do, not because that you reading my book doesn't mean you suddenly know how to do it as well as we know how to do it. There's nothing more annoying, and whether it's a book or a website or a blog or a podcast or whatever it is, we've all had this experience. You get sucked in by how to self-publish your book, and you read a couple of pages and there's some good info, and then it says, for the rest of it, go and sign up to my website. Or, so you've been sucked in and you haven't got all the information that you wanted.
Gotcha.
All that does is frustrate people. So
True.
If you write your book like that, and some authors do this, if you deliberately write your book like that, you're just going to annoy people. If your book is just to try and suck people in to signing up to your website, all you're going to do is annoy them. Yeah. I always say to authors, the best advertisement you can give yourself is a really good book. That's how you get people. They're going to read the book, and like I say, they're going to say, Chris, financial planner, his book was awesome. I'm going to give him a call. Yep. Whereas if they go, I thought this book was going to be good. All it is rubbish, and I've got to go and sign up to his website to get the good stuff.
By providing that knowledge up front and allowing people full access to the knowledge of the process and how it all works, then it becomes their decision to decide, well, what is it that I'm going to do this week? Am I going to become an expert self-publisher and just stick with Michael's book and follow it top to tail and go the whole way through, versus the book has given me a great introduction to what Michael and his business are all about. I've now got a good feel for what the public publishing process is going to be like. So now what I'll probably do is I'll dedicate smaller amounts of my time, because my time is probably going to be better off spent engaged in my business that I do well, and work alongside someone who does their business rather well. It's just a better use of your time. I mean, what are you giving up by learning a brand new skill?
Yeah, you've summed it up perfectly. I do know authors who have managed the whole process themselves and produced really good books. I do know authors who've managed the whole process themselves, and it's been an utter disaster.
Oh no!
An utter disaster. It's a very big, complicated process. And if you did work through my book and you did your homework on the internet and got lots of useful info, you can do it and you can do it well.
Sure.
But if you kind of jump into it without the proper education, the things start to go wrong. You don't realize that you needed your editor talking to your designer, and you need your designer talking to your printer, and all this kind of stuff that if you've never done it before and you haven't done your homework properly, you don't realize until you're halfway in and it's all gone completely pear-shaped that you've just completely messed it up. We do probably 3 or 4 what we call rescue packages a year.
So this is an author who finds themselves in this position where it all looked as clear as a bell and easy as pie, and Michael's book made it look far too easy.
No, it's not usually people who've read my book. It's not usually people who've read my book. It's usually people who have done a little bit of homework on the internet, and they've
just got enough knowledge to get into trouble.
Enough knowledge to get into trouble.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So they haven't, you and I were talking before about planning, David. Planning is so important.
Absolutely.
So where people run into trouble is they say, okay, editing's the first step. I'll hire an editor. And that's all they do. They look into editing, they hire an editor. And then they go, design's the second step. I'll find a designer. And they don't realize that there's things the editor should know that the designer is going to do before you even start editing.
Right.
So that they get to the design stage and the designer says, okay, so have you done this and this and this? And they say, no, I didn't know I had to do that. So they have to go back to the editor and say, now you need to do this and this and this so the designer can do this and this and this.
Right.
And then the same thing happens with the printing. You go to they get to the end, they go, okay, the last thing I do is print my book. So I'll talk to the printer at the end of the process.
Yeah.
They get to the end of the process and the printer says, did your designer do this and this and this? And they say, no, my designer didn't do that and that and that. So you've got to go back to your designer and tell your designer to do this and this and this.
And this is all rework, and it's all paid by the hour. And obviously delaying your book release date.
Costing you more
by
money,
months and months and months.
Driving everybody crazy.
Yeah.
It can increase your time frame significantly because you've then got to fit back into the workflow with your editor, your designer, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The first thing we do when I sit down and have initial conversations with authors, I say to them, tell me what happens at the end. How do you want your book to look? How do you want it to be printed? How are you going to use it?
Yes.
So we're going to start at the end and work backwards.
Okay.
Because how you're printing your book, how you're doing your ebook, all those sorts of things affect how it'll be designed, and how it's going to be designed can affect how it's going to be edited. So that's the crucial step. When people jump in themselves without enough knowledge, that's what they get wrong.
Well, it becomes a wish orientation rather than a goal orientation.
Exactly right.
And as you say, obviously those sort of codependencies and prerequisites.
Yep.
Who needs to know what about what at what stage and when, and how many people need to be involved, and at what stage do people not involved in the process yet need to be informed prior to being involved. And that's the sort of thing where it tends to come unstuck by the sounds.
Very much so. A rescue package is not usually like, the design was bad or the editor didn't do a good job.
No.
They're not usually the problems. The problems are usually, and it's quite often as you get towards the end and you start looking at your printing options and that kind of thing, or you look at, I want to put my book on Amazon, and you haven't prepared your book in a format that Amazon accepts.
Right.
And if you're halfway through the process already with your designer, you've got to go back 3 steps with your designer and rejig everything. So that's where things go wrong. It's more the kind of the macro planning things that when we jump in and do the rescue package, it's not so much that one individual person stuffed something up.
No.
It's just that the whole thing hasn't been coordinated.
It's not the content, it's the frame.
Exactly, yep.
Okay.
And the author hasn't realised until I've gotten 2/3 of the way through the process that there's some things they should have done 2.5 months ago and they haven't done them.
Right. And that would sting.
It is. And look, it can be tricky to sort out because the books build, like say the design builds on the editing, the printing build, comes after the design.
Yeah.
So if you stuff something up early, it can affect your whole process and you can really cause problems with it for yourself. Yeah.
That's interesting, I suppose. Yeah, probably intuitively I would have thought of book publishing as being, the analogy might be more around Lego, that you're going to start with, 30 different Lego pieces of different sizes and different colours, and you can assemble them any way you want. But what you're suggesting here is it's more like sculpting. You throw the clay onto the wheel, and you begin shaping it. So how you initially shape is going to determine whether it's a vase or a cup or a
very much so.
a mess.
Very much so. The way I explain to authors is books evolve.
Right. Yeah.
So if you get one small decision wrong at the start,
it'll have dependencies all the way through.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if it's just something simple like the way your editor formats your book in Microsoft Word. You can, because, that sounds trivial, that doesn't matter. Word's, it's not that important. You can just go through and fix things up. But if you've got a 300-page book and it's got lots of headings and lots of things in it, your editor's spent 3 months slaving away on it, and they haven't used a particular type of formatting that your designer wants, and you go and give it to your designer, and your designer says, your editor didn't do A, B, and C. You have to go back to your editor, and they have to spend another week or two on it, going through and redoing all that again.
Wow.
And then you run into the exact same problems when your designer does things, and you go to the printer, and again, the printer says, your designer didn't do A, B, and C, so you've got to go back to your designer again.
Okay, so there's plenty of scope for rework if you're not aware of how these things go.
Yeah.
So
one particular, we're actually doing my rescue package right now. One problem we run into quite often is designers who haven't done books before. And there's a few things that go wrong with that. Number one, they don't understand simple conventions like you don't put a page number on a blank page, things like that. They don't understand that you always start page one of the book on the right-hand page. All these little conventions. And if you add all of those up and you get all of them wrong, your book looks terrible and it looks self-published.
Right.
And
will the printers have a problem with those if those conventions aren't followed as well?
Sometimes they will,
wow.
sometimes they won't.
Yeah.
Printers do, let me rephrase that, good printers do go back to an author and say, you've got this wrong. If we print this like this, it's not going to look great.
Yeah.
Look, most printers, if they warn the author and the author says, oh, look, I've got no choice now, I've done it, I've got to print it, most of them will print it.
They'll just let it go.
I did have a printer a few years ago, not one of our books, obviously, but a book that had been taken to them. It was so poorly prepared. They said, we won't print this.
What?
They literally said, we won't print this. Because they said, and totally fair enough in my opinion, it's got their name on it. The things that were wrong would have looked like printing mistakes. Like margins were wrong. Yeah. Just everything was wrong. And I think they're quite within their rights to say, we're not putting our name on this book as having printed it.
Well, that's
that
true.
bad.
It's not a bad business lesson either, is it? Because
No.
I mean, as someone who sells things to other people, I mean, you are usually input into another process.
Yeah.
And somebody else's credibility is going to depend on that accumulated credibility of everyone who's been involved in putting it all together. So it's a team effort, isn't it? Do you think of the word sort of project management's coming to mind too, Michael? As we're talking to you, is that too routine a term to use?
No, it's 100% accurate. I say that to new authors. I say I'm the project manager.
Okay.
It is my job to keep it on track.
Yeah.
And they say to me, oh, what about A? What about B? What about C? And I say, don't worry about that now. I'll tell you when that needs to be done.
Nice
if
one.
there's something that you haven't done that you should have done, I'll be on the phone to you saying, hey, you haven't done that yet. You really need to do this right now.
Okay.
So
before we progress to the next step where we could where it could possibly involve rework or putting the whole thing in reverse for a little while and then back on track again.
Yeah, exactly right. And it is very much project management. It is 100% exactly that.
Okay.
We have a team working on books. Obviously, we have editors, designers, proofreaders, printers, and my job is to coordinate all of those people.
Okay. So, Michael, how do you see publishing trends changing into the future?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Publishing has changed a lot in the last 7 or 8 years. A lot of that's been to do with technology. So printing technology's come a long way in the last few years. E-books, print on demand, setups for authors, social media, like we've talked about, authors doing their own promotion, that kind of thing. All of those have led to big changes in the publishing industry recently. That's why we've seen the rise in self-publishing that we were talking about before. So in terms of the next few years, I think those trends will continue. Self-publishing is definitely still growing. The major publishers are definitely doing fewer books. So I think those trends will definitely continue. I think printing technology is almost at its peak in terms of the quality you can get. So
not much more to ring out there. Like it's
not much at all. 7 or 8 years ago, I could tell a self-published book from 20 feet away because the print quality was poor.
Right. Okay.
These days, you can print 200 copies of your book and it will look just as good as a book printed by Penguin where they've printed it with a major printer printing 5,000 copies.
Wow. Okay.
So you just simply couldn't do that 5 or 6
difference.
years ago. Yeah.
Right.
So the publishing model, even for not so much for the major publishers, the major publishers are now simply doing fewer books and trying to promote them more and sell them more. Mm-hmm. Mid-level publishers, their model's kind of changing from doing, say, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 copies of a book to printing fewer copies, and you can reprint more quickly and easily these days with digital printing technology.
Oh, I see. So you become more agile. So you don't necessarily need to accumulate a stock of print books so that you don't run out.
And for small publishers, plenty of small publishers exist now printing 200 copies at a time and selling ebooks and print on demand, which again, 7 or 8 years ago, you just couldn't do it.
Unheard of.
Yeah, you literally couldn't do it. You need the only way to get a good quality book years ago was to print 1,500 copies of it, put it into bookstores, all that kind of stuff. And that's just beyond most small publishers. So there are a lot more small agile publishers now just doing 2 or 3 books a year. We've got a division of what we do that's actually a traditional publishing arm. A lot of smaller publishers just, the people have actually got a day job, most of them. So, and they're publishing something that they do on the side. Like, say, just do 2 or 3 books a year, working on the weekend, work in the evenings, print 200, 300, 400 copies. And that's actually a viable publishing model these days.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's become much more agile than it was in the past. And the barriers to entry are much lower than they used to be. And with the availability of the technology, it's within reach of lots of different folks, and for the authors themselves to some extent too.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. That also works with self-publishing, obviously 200, 300, 400 copies, that kind of thing. Now, what has gotten harder is actually selling books. Right. So just the traditional book sales has gotten a lot harder. Every publisher I speak to these days, the big ones, the small ones, medium ones, books they would say, 7 years ago, I would have sold 3,000 copies of this book. Now I can sell 1,500 of it. And authors who say, publishers who say, this book, I would have sold 1,500 of it 10 years ago. Now I'm going to try and sell 500 of it. Authors doing their own publicity is much more important than it used to be. One of the major things you used to get with the publisher, one of the main reasons you go with a major publisher was the publicity you'd get.
Yes.
So these days, it's not nearly the same. A lot more of the responsibility for marketing publicity falls on the author now because of the technology we were talking about. That so much of it's internet-based these days, going social media, building your own following, that kind of thing. The publisher can't do that for you. You have to do that yourself. The major publishers now are looking at, before it was a really simple model for everybody in publishing. The author writes a book, publisher produces it, puts it in bookstores. That was it, full stop. That was the only way you could do it.
Exactly.
I talk to authors, self-publishers, small publishers, medium-sized publishers. Everybody's doing all sorts of different things these days. You know, various partnership publishing models. There's hybrid models, probably some similar in some ways. Self-publishing, traditional publishing. A lot of traditional publishers now, actually not a lot, some traditional publishers are asking authors to buy back copies of their book to get it over the line. So if you're a first-time author and they say they're going to print 2,000, 2,500 copies of your book, part of your contract will actually be that you personally buy 500 copies of those books. That was unheard of 10 years ago.
Yeah, how interesting.
Wasn't unheard of, very rare. So that's all part of it's just getting harder to sell books in the traditional format. So that's where there's room for all the self-publishers and small publishers to be doing all sorts of really interesting things.
Is that attributable to the fact that books are available in different formats and in different technologies? Is that where the sales have moved? Have I understood you?
Yeah. No, it's definitely contributed to it a lot. It's contributed to the trend towards self-publishing as well. Because these days I know publishers and self-publishers who their only form of distribution is Amazon, print on demand, that kind of thing.
Yep.
That's a viable option these days. So all of that is where that before 10 years ago might have been a small author who got picked up by a major publisher.
Right.
They're now quite happy to go by themselves.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah,
So instead of publishing under Penguin Random House,
Yeah.
you're publishing under your own name through your own Amazon account, and you're controlling all of the paperback, ebook, and potentially audiobook.
Yeah, you can control all of it
versions.
yourself
Yeah.
very easily.
Whereas you would have been dependent on the publisher for that previously.
Rights weren't something people cared about so much 10, 15 years ago. Because like I say, the whole publishing model was author writes the book, publisher publishes it, put it in bookstores. That was pretty much all anybody did. So there's not too much issue with rights and that kind of thing because there wasn't too much else an author would do with it anyway.
Oh, but so there wasn't an alternative?
No, there really wasn't.
Right. Okay.
These days, whether you've self-published your book, whether you've written a novel, a book for your business, whatever you're doing, these days you won't meet an author who doesn't also want to do blogs and do a podcast and do a website and put chapters on, put sample chapters on social media and get their own following.
Chapters.
Exactly right.
Whereas previously, the light's gone on. The light's gone on now. So there are these different avenues for producing your content.
Yeah,
and
that's what creates the potential rights issues. Whereas 10, 15 years ago, like I say, I mean, not obviously some people might have had some rights issues, but on the whole, the publisher would say, "Here's the publicity you're doing, go and do it. Here's what we're doing with your book, go and do it." And the author would just be okay, and they'd trundle off.
But always driving back to
it was all controlled by the publisher.
And there was only one place and one format in which to buy the publication.
Yeah. So these days, part of, like we've been talking about, the kind of, splitting up of the publishing industry is authors can do all these things with their book now that they just couldn't do 10, 15 years ago. You wouldn't have even thought of it as an author 15 years ago. You just pretty much do what your publisher told you to do. Yeah. So the technology changes has led to all of those kind of rights issues. And some people do self-publish specifically to retain 100% control of their book. So, because if you self-publish, obviously, apart from, again, it's complicated, apart from, it may be with your design and that sort of thing, there'll be copyright.
Right.
But in terms of using the content, putting it on your website, putting it on your blog, all that kind of thing, you can do whatever you want with it. It's your book. Yep. Yeah. So you both wrote it and published it. So there's no one to say you can't do that. Whereas if you're with a major publisher, or a medium-sized one, any kind of traditional publisher, they will have a say in whether you put the book on your website, sample chapters, that kind of thing. They will have a say in whether you create a podcast based on the book. They will have a say in, if you want to do a YouTube channel based on the book. They will have a contractual say. I mean, in some cases, they might even be able to say, you actually can't do that. Now, here's the thing. Don't take that at all as a criticism of traditional publishing. It is 100% reasonable. Yes. They paid to produce your book. That's why they have the rights in it. Yeah, there's a lot of
they have acquired those rights from
exactly.
You. Yeah.
They've paid for it to be designed. Yeah. They've paid for it to be edited. They've paid for it to be printed. There is unfortunately a lot of self-publishing hype that criticizes the traditional publishers. Oh, they take your rights. They take you this. They take you that. The reason they do, they're paying to produce the book. Yes. You can't expect them to pay to produce the book. No. And then for you to be able to run off and do whatever you want with it. That's just not reasonable.
That's having your cake and eating it.
Exactly right. Yeah. If you want full rights, you pay to produce the book, that's fine. If someone else pays to produce your book, they've got some say in what you do with it. People sometimes say to me, what's better, traditional publishing or self-publishing? I run a self-publishing business. I will not say to you automatically self-publishing. Yeah. The answer is going to be, what are you trying to do with your book?
Back to that original
question.
It's
what it always comes back to. What are you trying to do with your book? Now, I can come up with, for pretty much anything you want to do, I can come up with a self-publishing plan that will work for it. Mm-hmm. But there are other reasons that people might want to go with a traditional publisher, and maybe that's better for them. Yeah. This automatic criticism of publishers take all your rights and that kind of thing, it's just people trying to sell you self-publishing services most of the time. What I always say to authors, if they're thinking of going with a traditional publisher, but they do want to do blogs, they do want to do podcasts, in your very first meeting with that publisher, if you're lucky enough to get a conversation with them, say to them, write down what you want to do and sit across the table with them and say, I want to do these 12 things with my book. Can I do that contractually with you if I sign up with you? And if they say no, then they're not the right publisher for you.
Excellent.
It's actually a pretty easy choice. They might say, yeah, you can do these 7 things, you can't do these 5 things. And then that's up to you to say, well, okay, that's fine. They won't let me do a blog based on the book. Okay. Because, if you think about it, and some authors do try and do this, they want to turn their book into a blog. You're actually just giving away all the content that the publisher's just paid $30,000 to produce. So of course they're not going to be happy with that. Whereas if you've self-published, you can turn it into a blog. That's absolutely fine. How am I going to print it? Paperback, hardback? Am I going to do an ebook? What ebook format am I going to use? Is it going to be on Amazon? Am I going to do an audiobook? All these sorts of questions. You have to answer all of those at day one because that'll affect decisions you make along the way. You also have to answer it from a point of view of how am I going to use the book in terms of, am I going to do a blog? Am I going to, like say, I'm going to build a YouTube channel around the book? Am I going to, promote it lots on social media? You also need to answer all of those questions because that will also affect the publishing model that you choose. And like I say, I can pretty much tell you every time I've seen an author make a major mistake with their book, it's because they didn't answer those questions to begin with. Right. And not only did they not answer them, they didn't know they had to answer them. They didn't even sit down and think of it. Like I say, they thought printing's at the end of the process. I'll look at the printing at the end. And they don't realize that you really need to do that at the start. Yeah, look, if you do your own homework and all that kind of thing, you can certainly do it yourself. But yeah, look, I have authors say to me sometimes, like I say, we always talk to our authors after their books come out. I have them say to me quite often, I don't know how anybody manages that themselves. It's a very involved process. Okay. Lining up all the pieces in the right place and getting everything done at the right time. There's a lot involved. Work with people who've produced books before. Writing it's the first phase.
Yep, phase 1.
Producing the book is the second phase.
Phase 2.
Marketing, promoting it, publicizing it is the third phase.
Phase 3.
So think of it like that. Your work is not done when the book is printed. Plan all of the stuff you're going to do in phase 3 while you're in phase 2. So that when your books land in your office, you get 200 books delivered from your printer, you're ready to go that day.
And you can.
People are most interested in your book when it's new. If you're trying to do publicity, if you're talking to a bookstore and all this kind of thing, and you say, oh, my book came out 7 months ago, you're behind straight away.
It's lost its shine a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, you've missed an opportunity.
Yeah, definitely, very much so. It's one of the great, the biggest marketing point of your book for most books. It's new. Exactly right. It's new. Here's my new book. It's an excuse to ring up the media. Send a book to the media. It's new. Here it is. Do you want to talk to me about it? Do you want to interview me? You're not going to send the book and say, hey, this came out 7 months ago. They're going to say, well, why are you sending it to me now?
Yeah, exactly. So, We've just interviewed an author on the same subject matter 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. That was very, very informative. So don't forget, folks, it's Michael Hanrahan of Michael Hanrahan Publishing.